Elisabeth Braw in London. She's a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council's Transatlantic Security Initiative in the Scowcroft Centre for Strategy and Security. Elisabeth, good to have you on this News Hour. Thanks for joining us. So we heard there from our correspondent about what would seem like a lot of forward movement when it comes to putting together a peace deal. The US President Donald Trump just a few days ago said that he's optimistic, although that is a confidence that he often seems to carry with these kinds of talks. But when you see the continued heavy strikes on both sides and the fighting on the ground, how much of that fighting actually impacts the talks and possible agreements?
Well, what we know is, as your correspondent also said, that Zelenskyy has said that he believes about 90% of this peace agreement has been ironed out, but the remaining 10% could scupper it. So really, percentages are useful, but they don't really mean a lot when the 10% could scupper the deal. And in the meantime, Russia is using this process to its advantage by continuing to attack Ukraine. And clearly, Ukraine is continuing to defend itself by counterattacking. And what was, I think, really extraordinary was to see how Russia, just in the past couple of days, tried to undermine this deal by falsely planting news of a Ukrainian attack on one of President Putin's palaces, which turned out not to be true. And that really shows how Russia views this process. It's not interested in reaching a peace agreement. If it were, it would seriously commit to these negotiations. It certainly would not expand its attacks while the fighting continues. And it certainly would not try to discredit Ukraine in such a blatant way in the eyes of the United States in particular, and President Trump most especially.
And when it comes to President Trump, just a few months ago, we saw him lash out at Ukraine's president in the White House, and then, of course, hold that meeting with Putin later on in Alaska. Nothing really came of that. Trump, though, seems to be a bit more irritated, if I can use that word, with Putin at this time. Is the US right now really the only ones who can put any pressure on Russia to come to some sort of agreement by using the leverage that they have? And what would that leverage be? Would it possibly be more sanctions? Because Russia seems to be a little, I wouldn't say immune, but almost prepares itself for continued sanctions.
Yes, Russia has now been under sanctions for 4 years, a bit more than 4 years, actually. Ukraine-related sanctions, and has become used to it. It has switched over to a wartime economy. It's not trading as much with the West as it used to. It has expanded trade with other countries to get around these sanctions. So it's any country really can adjust to sanctions if enough time passes, and that's what Russia has done. Then when it comes to what the United States can do, clearly the biggest asset the United States has is its ability to offer trade with Russia if the war ends. And the question is, what does the United States demand of Russia in exchange for creating that new a trading relationship, which Putin would be very interested in, but clearly you as Russia would have to give something in return, namely a just peace to Ukraine. And since you mentioned President Trump being arrested with President Putin, that was really interesting to see in recent hours, actually, that President Trump reacted angrily to that fake news campaign by Russia, trying to suggest that Ukraine had attacked a palace belonging to Putin. President Trump didn't believe it. It was a rare example of a Russian fake news campaign gone completely wrong, because everybody could see straight away on those videos that it just wasn't true. There was no debris, no anything else. So I think at the moment, Trump is rather irritated with Putin, because this was an obvious attempt to delay or undermine the peace process. And one thing is important to remember: in this peace process, there is it continues while the conflict is raging. Ordinarily, you would start with a ceasefire, and during that ceasefire, you would negotiate peace. That is not the case in this war, which is why it's so difficult.
Yes, nothing ordinary about this ongoing war. Elisabeth Braw in London, good to speak to you. Thank you very much.